And good evening and welcome to City Focus. I'm Marty Olsen, your host, and tonight I've got a brand new guest, and I would like to welcome Shaun Mastroianni, who's a candidate on the Republican ticket for the 20th District State Senate seat. So, Shaun, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
I've been looking forward to having you on since you garnered the nomination recently, so let's have some fun here over the next 50 minutes or so. Now, you're a Southeastern Connecticut boy. You grew up in Stonington?
So I didn't grow up in Stonington, so I grew up in Canterbury, in the northeast corner, and then after college moved down to the shoreline, was in Groton at first, and then sort of kind of migrated, I guess, over to Stonington, and been was in Stonington for quite some time.
And at what point did you decide to come on this side of the river?
I would say probably we looked at the housing and what's going on with housing, and we took advantage of the market and decided to sort of downsize a little bit, and we moved to Old Lyme in 2023.
Okay, so you're relatively new in this particular district.
So I am relatively new in this district.
Yeah. So Heather Summers was a state senator over where you were across the river.
Yes, Heather Summers was our senator.
Yeah, well, she's a top shelf gal, so done a good job for many years, and hope that she continues with her success.
As I do. She's a friend. She's a mentor. She's helped me along the way and part of my political career, and she's there for the ride for this to help me as well, as many people are.
That's terrific. Now you have served in a variety of capacities in the government locally. Isn't that correct?
That is.
Please share.
So I think my problem is not having the ability to probably say no when people are looking for volunteers. I have served on Board of Ed when somebody came off, there was a brief time I lived in Chester, so I was on Board of Ed and I was on the Park and Rec Commission. Then when I went over to Stonington, was going to take a little bit of a break, but then somebody quite quickly found out that I like to get involved, I like to give back, ended up on planning and zoning, learned a lot about planning and zoning, about affordable housing, became the Blight Citation Hearing Officer when we didn't have one, and we created that position. And then I was an elected official, a Burgess in Stonington Borough for about 6 years.
Well, that's terrific. It's good to give back. I think it's incumbent upon those that have the capacity to do so, because that's what makes a community, is those folks who are able to give back.
Well, I think growing up, I came from a household that was a working family, and we didn't necessarily have a whole lot, and we looked at, do we pay this or do we pay that? And, it was always important to, when I got older, to get ahead, but also still be part of the community and give back. I think everybody giving back to part of a community builds a stronger community. So when I got out of college, I actually joined a board in London for an adoption agency. And the first thing, they said, like, well, what can you help us financially? And I said, well, my student loans do not allow that, but I can give you more time than anybody else probably. So I think when people think about giving back, it's not necessarily money. It could be your time or it could be your expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you did your undergraduate work at Eastern Connecticut?
I did. So I went to Eastern Connecticut State College and got a bachelor's in business, and then decided once I got into the workforce, and when I entered the workforce, there weren't a whole lot of jobs, and everybody was struggling when they got out of college to find jobs. I ended up at an insurance, lots of cubicles, and said, you know what, I really like to interact with people in person. This is not going to work. I went back and got my nursing home administrator's license and also my master's in business administration to the University of New Haven.
Did you commute to New Haven, or
I was fortunate enough to be at their satellite classroom here in New London.
At Mitchell College?
At Mitchell College. Great program. It was 2 years intensive every Saturday. And all of my classmates are very successful. Some of them still in the area. It was a great program.
Now, did you do that almost immediately after your undergraduate, or did you take a little time to catch your breath, or did you test the work environment first and then decide to go back to school? How'd you do that?
Well, when I think back about it and talking with my parents, I was one of three, and I was the one that really didn't really have a plan after high school. And so we always thought that, I was told I would go to college. I went to college, but now I actually have the highest degree out of my other siblings. And I always say it was by accident that I got my master's. I went to a college fair with my brother here in New London, and I said, I'm really not interested, but I'll stop with you. And next thing you know, we both were enrolled. After a month or so, he dropped out. I continued. But it was probably about 6 months to a year after I started working and realized that where I was in the insurance company was not a place I wanted to be, and knew that I needed to gain not only the education, but contacts through being in the program.
Okay, so you've kind of morphed into housing and working with elderly folks, and it appears, and I saw that in your background you worked at Green Tree, so you've worked in a medical facility as well, so it's not just housing. You've kind of touched base in a variety of areas here.
Yeah, so some of my family have run nursing homes and have managed nursing homes, which kind of drove me to kind of go towards the nursing homes. I enjoy the elderly, and so I started working for a family-owned Writers Health Care in Chester. They also own Green Tree, and they have Mystic Manor in this area here, and really learned the ropes through them and it was a family-owned. And then from there, kind of moved on to more of housing and went to assisted living, independent living, and spent quite a number of years with Benchmark Senior Living throughout Connecticut and Rhode Island. Towards the end, kind of traveled for them. And so right now I work for a nonprofit, Connecticut Baptist Homes. It's based mostly in Meriden, but we have a location in Brooklyn. I manage the location in Brooklyn.
Well, that's north of Norwich, correct?
Yes. So there we have a nursing home, we have an assisted living, we have independent living, we have cottages, and about 2 years ago we opened up a memory care unit in the assisted living. We're not a CCRC, but we consider ourselves a campus. What I like a little bit different than my previous experience is that it's a not-for-profit, and we try to balance the cost of the elderly living there and the cost of actually being able to afford staff, pay the staff, and all of the money, if there's any money left at the end of the year, that money goes back into the staff, it goes back into the building. And it's a very different culture than the previous places.
Okay. Excuse me. Well, that sounds pretty challenging, and I think the needs for elderly and elderly housing, and as folks age, their health care needs change as well. And generally, I hate to paint with too broad a brush, but elderly often require more attention as they get older, not less. So, and then have the capacity to pay for everything. So it's a lot of moving parts.
I think more than ever, it's been very challenging for someone to think about when they're retiring. How do they plan? You know, is it home care? Is it, you know, a setting that's an assisted living? And I think affordability really comes into it. I think we're fortunate enough in Connecticut where the assisted living prices have not gone to the extremes as they have in other parts of the country. But what I really do like about the company that I currently work for, the organization, is that, you know, we provide that affordability, but also we provide that access for them to have health care. But one of the things that I would like to, you know, eventually go to Hartford is to really address affordability of health care for seniors and access to health care. And anybody that works in the nursing home business or works in home care as a nurse or a CNA, they understand the access that's not available. And sometimes seniors are deciding whether they should go to a doctor or not go to a doctor based upon price. And we really shouldn't be deciding if we should be getting health care based upon whether we can afford it. It should be a basic right that we all have.
So that to you is one of the key issues as to why you've decided to step into this race and seek this office.
So one of my key issues is really the affordability and having healthcare accessible to the elderly. I kind of look at like why I ran as like sort of like the continuum of life. It kind of goes from like when education, we have to make sure that our kids are educated and that our schools are running properly and they have the tools, the money to actually educate the kids to where they need to be. And then it kind of, you know, goes into like the midlife, like your affordability to where to live. Can you live? Can you afford groceries? Can you afford heat in your house? And then it kind of ends sort of like with the seniors and having access to health care.
Well, that is interesting. Now you've got background in nursing and business, and now you're primarily in administration. Is that correct?
So what's always unique typically about a nonprofit is that you wear multiple hats. So although I'm the chief operating officer for the organization, I also wear the hat of being the licensed nursing home administrator in the building in Brooklyn. And my boss, the CEO, she shares the same thing, and she is the licensed nursing home administrator in our Meriden location. So although I'm in administration, I like to say that I'm still in the day-to-day and able to have that personal connection with the residents and with the staff. The organization that I work for just provides such a gratifying atmosphere for me, allowing me to be part of the administration, help bring the organization to where it needs to be to function correctly, but still allows me to have those personal interactions and relationships with the residents.
Okay. Now you're the incumbent that you're challenging is a union president and visiting nurse. So she's in the field as well, at a different level. But does that? Do you look at that as being good, bad, or indifferent for what you're trying to accomplish, or argue your points?
Well, I think what I like to say is my opponent always reminds everybody that she's a nurse, and I like to say that I manage 30 to 40 of these nurses. And I think that in my experience and in my role, I have a greater viewpoint of multiple facets of the business. And I think sometimes when you're a nurse, you just really focus on the clinical. And sometimes, you know, in my industry, we say, you know, we need to do a better job of teaching the nurses to be managers and giving them the tools to be able to manage people. So I think that I have more experience overall that's not just focused on nursing, it's not just focused on healthcare, but really focused on operations. It's focused on building relationships. It's focused on driving down costs where necessary to make things function. It's not just focused on somebody's health. It's focused on the big picture to make sure the entire organization functions. So I think then when we look at our experience, her experience is very specialized, where I find that my experience is a lot more broader. And if you look at what I've done outside of my work career, I've expanded that as well. I think I'm very good at building relationships and bringing people together and having the conversation and trying to come to, an agreement. Not everybody's going to get their part, but everybody really wants to be heard, and we need to allow everybody to be heard. One of my big things about running is really, taking the time and listening to what everybody has to say and taking in their opinion and not cutting somebody off when they're talking, but really listening and not trying to think about, okay, what is my response going to be before they finish? It's really about listening to them, and it's really okay, to say, I really appreciate your viewpoint. Let me think about this. And sometimes there's not a reaction that's really necessary. It's really just listening to it. So I think I got a little bit off there, but
Not at all.
I just think there are some key differences, and the people that are around me and around my campaign, what we hear is, about me is I care. I actually care. I'm actually, visible within the district. If you go to Facebook and you look up Shaun for State Senate, you will see that, we are out and about. You'll see my husband on there. You'll see my daughter. She's 5, Sophia. It's really, the campaigning's really been a family event, I would say. And I think it's a family decision when someone decides to run. And my daughter, she is really enjoying this. She's always asking, where are we going next? We've socialized her from the beginning. We'd take her out to restaurants even when she was a baby. Different people that are close to us would care for her so that she could experience, everybody and be comfortable and able to communicate and properly behave in public. And I think, if anybody has seen us out and about, they can see that, she is mature for her age, and she loves to get out
I
there.
think trying to integrate your child into what you're doing, I think that's terrific. I applaud that. I think that's a good thing.
Well, I think, when you look at politics and you look at how things run in a town or a state, you have to really start when somebody's young. I have to say, I come from a household where I was raised where we didn't really talk about politics. We didn't really have politics. My parents probably didn't vote every time that they should have been voting. It was not until probably, grade school where you start learning about government, you start learning about the presidents, where I really started to get involved. I was like the 8th grade class president. I was involved in high school as well.
You're kind of almost answering my next question. I mean, what kind of piqued your interest to get involved into politics and government? And it seems like it goes into student government, so it goes back a day or two.
So I think everybody asks every person that wants to be a politician or is a politician, why would you want to be a politician? And I really have to say there's something about being part of the process and knowing that you as an individual can have an effect that can make somebody's life greater or better and improve their quality of life. I think that, I work in senior living, and sometimes we're surrounded by a lot of death, and it really makes you reflect, what really is important for your short period of time that you are here, you know. And I think, you know, it's not really about like what you have. It's not necessarily about what you've done, but to me, I think it's more about the impact of what you've done. So I think that's what drives me. I want to be known for like the impact that I had on my community or that I had on my state. It's not about what I have. I think everybody really needs, if you really focus on that and you really think about it, you know, that's what drives me. And I think, you know, politics are tough right now. Everybody knows politics are tough. Sometimes you can't even discuss it at the dinner table with other people. But that doesn't mean we give up on it, no matter what side you're on. I think that we need good people on both sides, and we need to bring them together. And we can't have everybody on one side, because you never want to be part of a board or part of a Senate where everybody's from the same side, everybody has the same train of thought, everybody thinks the same. That becomes a problem. It becomes, in my industry, we call it the yes board. And nothing's worse than having a board where you're the CEO or an executive and everybody's like, okay, let's do that.
Yeah. Well, up in Connecticut, it's almost like that, but it's the Democrats. We do have a phone call, so we're going to take a call.
Okay.
Good evening, and you're on the air.
Hey, Marty, thanks for taking my call. I've got a question for your guest. You already covered or asked him why he wants to go in politics. I guess my question would be what he would want to try to accomplish his first term in Hartford.
So what I would like to accomplish in my first term in Hartford if elected, I think, you know, my focus, you know, I talked a little bit about is like affordability, having housing that is affordable, groceries that are affordable, not choosing between heat and food. That's very important. Also looking at, you know, high energy costs. Everybody, you know, recently is talking about the energy bill that was passed in 2017 with Millstone, and, you know, what can we do about our electric bill? And I think, you know, we need to address some of the parameters that are there and really cap what the wholesale price is. And, you know, I think that bill got passed in 2017 and nobody really did anything about it. My opponent really attacks my party, the Republican Party, and really blames the Republican Party in her latest email and her postings. But I think you really have to look at that time in 2017. The Republicans did not have the majority in the Senate, so the Democrats were there as well, and everybody voted for it. But we knew about this, and for the term that she was in there, she did nothing about it. So I'm not really about blaming, it's really coming to the table with solutions. And whether it's from one party or the other, it's really about having solutions. So, I mean, I'm still out there talking to people and really figuring out what's important to them. So I don't really have like a list of exactly, you know, bills that I would look into drafting or proposing at this time. I think that as we knock more doors, we're going to learn more of what's important. But I can tell you this past week, it's about electric bills. Prior to that, it was about the cost of groceries. And, you know, it's also about affordability. Niantic's a great example where there's a building there where they've raised the rents. It's been on the news. Channel 3 on my way here was there. I haven't seen the story, but I'm assuming, you know, hopefully something has changed there. But we can't be driving everybody out because of these high rents. We have to look at how can we sustain somebody living in Connecticut? How can we sustain people having families in Connecticut and having it be affordable for everybody? So I don't necessarily have a list of exactly what I would do, but I'm still, you know, out there learning what's important to everybody, because out of the 8 towns that I have, you know, I have the shoreline from New London all the way to Old Saybrook, and then I do have interior towns, Montville, Basra, and Salem, and every town has its uniqueness, and that's what's so great about every town, that they do have their uniqueness, but every town does have a little bit of a different priority But the two that are really, really driving are affordability and energy cost, and starting to hear a lot more about schools as well.
Well, I could give you one bill that you could look into that your Republican predecessor was trying to get through his committee. I'm not sure what committee it was. It had to do with New London, like New Britain, getting minority representation on their council.
Minority party representation.
Right.
Yeah, right now in New London, it's exclusively governed by the Democrats. The mayor, the city council, and the board of ed. There's no elected Republicans at this time.
Right, but Shaun's Republican predecessor, Paul, had introduced the bill, and I don't think it got past committee, because New Britain and New London are the only two communities that are entitled to the representation because they're both at large. It's in the state statute. So I don't know why New Britain was able to get it done, and New London seems to be an uphill battle to get the same type of party minority representation on their council and board.
I appreciate you mentioning that. I did write it down. I think that it's definitely something that I can look into, and something that I could probably stand by, because just a few minutes ago I did talk about how it's important not to have a yes board. And having all Democrats on the board in New London, it is a problem. And I always say we need two parties, and we need two parties represented, in New London. So I appreciate that, and thank you. And that's definitely something that I can put forward and take a look at.
I mean, I see where you're talking about housing and affordability and all that. And as well as Niantic with their rent situation, that was the recent article. New London, well, everybody's expanding apartments or housing, but nobody's looking into expanding the services to support this housing, like public works, fire department, police.
I definitely, I could agree with you. I think, when I look at affordability I think is there any sort of incentive programs that we can create or fine tune? When I was on planning and zoning, and we would have the affordability projects come to us, and I remember sitting there and having them come and present and said, this is how many units we're going to have, this is the piece of property, and that's all we're telling you. And I think our board, our commission, we didn't fully understand at that time what the affordability laws were. And we were like, well, no, we want a drawing. What does it even look like? And they're like, we don't have to provide that to you. And I think it was a real learning opportunity for the entire commission. And we really, we did, sort of put it off to the next meeting so that we could research. But it demonstrated to me long ago that there is a problem with the affordability, bill law that's out there with the 10% rule. I mean, they can really do whatever they want as long as there's, they have that percentage. And, I think that's something that needs to be addressed. Not the biggest proponent of, I think towns should really manage the process, but I think at this point, the state may need to step in and put some parameters in place to really help that. And to go further, with your comment, when you look at that, we should look at the services that do need to be put in place. I know working for senior living, sometimes we can be very taxing in some of the new buildings that I've been in that haven't been there before on, the ambulance companies or the fire department. They're not used to having, 80 or 100 elderly residents that that building's going to call upon when needed.
I would suspect that with that many individuals in a complex, that would generate a fair amount of calls.
So it does generate a fair amount of calls, and you'll see a lot of senior livings try to figure out how to support their local firehouse or their local ambulance company, because they appreciate everything that they do, because they are a vital part of our community. And every time you try to tweak something or try to fix something, it always triggers something else. So when we fix affordable housing, we do have to look at the services and how that's going to affect the services as well. You definitely have given me a good amount so far to take a look at and really research, and if I get elected, see what I can do.
Well, thank you for taking the time.
John, thank you for calling.
Thanks, Marty.
Take care and have a nice evening.
You too.
Well, that's a good call. Kind of test the boundaries a little bit. One of the things that's, I think, important, and you touched on it, I mean, you've got 8 communities, and they all have their unique issues and concerns. You're not dealing with everything's nice and straight and flat. It's you've got an urban environment in New London, and then you've got some pretty rural areas, and their needs are different. And trying to mix and match and make it all work.
I think what's unique about the district is that it's diverse in, it has like your beach communities, it has your rural communities, Salem, Basra, and and then I like to say that I call it the city of New London, sort of like is like the centerpiece of the district, and I just think there's so much to offer in the district, and for somebody that's in this seat, I'm used to, the old district I used to live in, I'm used to, seeing the politicians out and about. Andre was always out there. He's always out there now. Heather is always out there. And I think when moving to my new district, my opponent, I never really saw, never really met. I didn't meet her until East Lyme Day. And, if you look at my Facebook, we've been to a lot of things. And I think it's important to not only serve in Hartford, but you really have to be out in your community and be part of your community, and people need to know who you are, and you need to celebrate the good things that are happening. Some people might not believe in handing out citations, but I think that a citation goes a long way for somebody. And to have like your senator or your state rep, honoring you or honoring the business that you're part of is really important. And I think not only are you representing, the district in Hartford, you're representing the district in the district. And you need to really highlight the good that's happening. I mean, there's so much bad happening in the world these days. I think there really needs to be more of a positive spin, on things, and we really need to look at politics more in a positive and coming to the table with more solutions instead of blame. I think one thing you will not get from me as a candidate, I'm not that person that's going to be blaming the past or blaming, my opponent for things. I may highlight, bad decisions that were made, but I'm really probably going to come more with solutions, but really listening to what's important to everybody, and then sort of developing and formulating those solutions, and hopefully drafting bills if I get elected.
When you get elected.
When I get elected.
That's the positive. When you get elected. And I think that you mentioned Andre, and when his first campaign, he was ran for state rep, actually. And part of New London was part of the district, and he was a Republican at the time. And he did work his tail off. He knocked on doors not once but twice. And he was a young kid. He got barely, I don't know if he was even 20 years old at that time. And he got elected, and it was that hard work. People really appreciated his tenacity at that time. I think that, but you have to keep it up. You can't rest on your laurels. I think the second time he ran for re-election, I think he thought everybody knows me now, and he didn't put in quite the yeoman effort that he did the first time, and he did not achieve success. But he did blame. He blamed the party. I think that was misguided. But in any event, that's just a tangent here.
You don't really get into this for the status. I don't think there's a whole lot of people that get into being a senator or being a state rep for the status. It is extremely hard work, and you're always going to be working. And there is not a time you're probably not thinking about something in your district or taking a call from someone or an email about how you can help somebody. And I think it's like that accessibility, like how accessible, is the person that is representing you. And I think people need to really remember, like the gentleman, John, who called, like, we're running because we want to serve. We want to hear from people. We want to know what's important to them because we want to try to help them and be that voice for them, whether it's in Hartford or whether it's, with a commissioner for, maybe like Deep, like Salem, really has an issue with Gardner Lake. What has been done about that? And, talking to a lot of Salem residents, not a whole lot has been done yet. On the 4th of July, you saw Representative Holly Cheeseman out there, and, she met with, not the commissioner, but the deputy commissioner there, and met with the police and the fire representatives, and really, this is to demonstrate this is what's going on at the lake.
She's a terrific asset, and when you have an opportunity to rub elbows with Holly, she knows what's going on, and she's very, very sharp. So I would, get under her wing. That won't hurt you at all. She'll be an asset.
I think Holly's done a great job, and I used to manage an assisted living in Niantic, right behind the Children's Museum that she runs. So I've known Holly for a while now, and really an asset to the community. And that she's hardworking because when she walks down Main Street, like at East Lyme Day, or she's at the farmer's market, she's stopping to talk to a lot of people. A lot of people are stopping to talk to her. And that's what you want as somebody who's going to be the leader for your district.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to talk with Paul Formica at all?
I have had a chance to talk to Paul Formica, and I think Paul did a great job in East Lyme, when he was involved in leadership, and then in the Senate. I think that Paul's done a very, very great job. And one thing I like to say to everybody, I have a good relationship with Paul. I think Paul is very knowledgeable. I think that he, is going to be a great mentor. But I do remind everybody, like, I'm not running like, the Paul Formica Part 2 campaign. I'm running my own campaign, and you're going to see the caring and the compassion, probably more than you've ever seen in a politic, really come out. Not saying that Paul wasn't, but I really want to run a different campaign, because we're different people. Some things we agree upon, some things we may not agree upon. But if you meet somebody that you agree upon everything, I think there's a problem.
Well, I would concur with that assessment for sure. Now, as a state senator, in your case with the 8 communities in our district that you alluded to earlier, just the tension just between the communities vying for, that slice of the pie, so to speak, and I don't necessarily mean for money, but just anything that's going on. And then you've got to deal with Hartford in the leadership, and what's going on in Hartford may not necessarily translate into what's in our best interest down here in southeastern Connecticut, and having to deal with those types of things, and perhaps what committees that you may want to be serving on you think would be in our best interest.
So I think first, just looking at like the district and balancing the district and their needs and balancing Hartford, is that the loudest voice doesn't always win. And I think that sometimes in new leaders that's hard. And I think from my experience throughout my career, I learned about really fostering relationships, building relationships, and really about having a balance. And so it's really in any Senate district, and some of the districts have a lot more than 8 towns. So we're fortunate enough to have 8, but it is a balance. And everybody really needs to get their fair share, and you need to be present in all of them. But you need to have an opinion. You have to stick with your opinion, and sometimes you may go against your leadership. But those become strong leaders. Those become people that are more respected, I believe. But you have to have the backing behind you of the why. Like, why do you feel this way, and your leadership may feel this way? And I think if you have enough evidence of why you think a certain way, and why you're pushing a topic, and why you want a bill to get passed, or you want money to go to a certain thing in your district, I think you really need to stick with your gut. And I think, through dealing with others in Hartford, and dealing with your leaders in your towns, they will see that you are hardworking. They will see that you care, and that there has to be a balance. It can't just be, everything for Waterford or everything for New London. I think you really have to balance, where you are and what your priorities are. As far as what committees, I think, I'm still thinking about which ones I would probably be most effective on. I think being on public health would, because that's where my background comes from, I think that would be helpful. If you look at the nursing homes, the assisted living that we do have in our district, I think that it would be important to them. And I think, we're still kind of looking at like what other ones, would be a good fit for me. But, we don't know what the makeup of everybody's going to be until after the election. So it's hard for everybody to say like what committee they want to be on, because you really should look at the whole group and look at, so what do we have for experience in all the senators that are elected that are Republicans? Okay, these are our committees. Where would we do best with everybody? Because if you elected, I'm a doctor, we're all doctors, like we all want to be in public health, well that doesn't help us. So I think you really have to look at the makeup of, who eventually would be elected in November.
And whether you're in a minority or majority position as well.
Very true, very true. But it's about the relationships too. And, you have to work with the other side to see who they're going to put on committees too, I think, and see where there could be a balance. And in the end of it, everybody, you really got to try to work together. And, having 2 parties is important, but also working together and bringing ideas together and having the ability to really work with the other side, I think is really important. And especially, I think in our district that we have here, it's really like a 50-50. I think, it will be a close election, and, it's a 50-50. And so that's why there needs to be so much compromise and so much listening happening to both sides, and moving forward what's in the best interest of the district, not necessarily a party sometimes.
Yeah. Well, one thing, I've only met you a couple of times since you've been nominated, and so this is the most time we've spent together. And I must say that I'm enjoying your passion and enthusiasm for the task at hand, because it's going to require that and a little bit more to achieve success. And I think that your opponent is vulnerable. And you keep your eye on the prize and don't get tugged too much going left and right, but going north and south, as they say. I think that will be a big benefit to you, and to reach out and touch as many people as you can. I think you're good at it.
Well, I think, you got to be out there. The saying, shaking hands, kissing babies, it does go a long way, but you got to really enjoy people, and you got to enjoy celebrating the diversity of people. I think so far, being out there and talking with everybody, the best part probably about this whole process has been all of the new people that I have met and my family have met within the district, and things that we've learned about the district through them have just been more satisfying than anything. And it's important to me to be part of the community and just get out there and meet new people. I think, it's important to meet new people. If you're not meeting new people, for me, like, what's the point of living? You need to have experiences, new experiences, and meeting people really can satisfy somebody's life.
Yeah. Now, what do folks have to do if they want to contact you? I mean, do you have a campaign phone number? Do you have a website? You mentioned Facebook earlier. What perhaps other social media outlets or platforms?
So we have our Facebook page that has been up for quite some time. You can contact myself or somebody on my team through Messenger on there. We have Shaun for State Senate at gmail.com. You can contact us through email. We're in the final stages of developing a website that people can go to and really look at, who I am, what I stand for. We're in the process of that. I think in the beginning of the campaign here, as everybody knows, is really about the fundraising and getting the qualifying signatures of in-district.
Have you met those goals yet and objectives?
And so we submitted our application last week, and we are still waiting to hear back about our application. But anybody who is very close to politics understands that you always raise more money than you need and get more in-district signatures. So we feel comfortable with our amount that we raised and with our buffer, and hope to hear back either this week or next week.
Well, that's important to get the state funding. Is a big deal.
Unfortunately, in this day and age, no money, no campaign.
That's tough.
You really need to have, and I think that the Citizens Election Program is a great program. It really kind of puts it on an even playing field for two individuals, and doesn't really have like some super wealthy person coming in and just sort of buying an election. It puts, my opponent and myself, we have the same amount of money to spend, and we have choices to make. And some of us will make good choices, we may make bad choices, but that we start off, on an even playing field.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly welcome to come back here if you think that this is a good use of your time, and this is free.
Well, I've enjoyed my time talking with you, and definitely something that we definitely will have to get on the calendar. And
I would encourage you to reach out to Lee Elsey on the radio in the morning. He's a good asset. I think in terms of his listening audience, you may be talking to the choir, but it gives you an opportunity to get your name out there and your message and what you're all about. And I think it's going to resonate with the public. But you've got to just touch as many people as you can.
I think that's absolutely the focus. It's really getting, my name out there and getting, recognized that, I'm just like everybody else, but somebody who, wants to invest the time and the commitment into, representing all 8 towns. And, I hope that everybody, people can reach out, and I would love to, continually keep meeting new people. And we want to make the campaign season fun, and hopefully we're going to keep it that way.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to have fun. I mean, it's serious business, but you got to enjoy what you're doing, and you certainly will learn an extraordinary amount about the communities that you're asking to represent and the people that you meet and that you touch. To me, that's all good stuff, win, lose, or draw. It's just absorb as much as you can.
It's so far, it's been amazing, what we've learned, because I've been reaching out to nonprofits and school systems, the administration, because I really want to talk to a large group of, people that are in the schools and people that are in the nonprofits. And it's amazing how many nonprofits we actually have in our district. And, you know, also looking at different
I
professions.
thought they were all in New London.
There's a lot in New London, but they actually are not all in New London. But, you know, looking at professions too, I think I was really surprised by the data looking at LPNs and RNs that actually live in our district. There's over 2,000. That's a lot of nurses in our district.
Yeah. We're getting down to our last couple of minutes. Is there anything that you'd like to close with that perhaps we haven't touched on that you'd like to share with the audience that, about you or what you're doing or where you're going to be maybe this weekend or whatever's on your mind?
Well, I think that the plans for this week really depend on the weather and the rain. You know, but hopefully we can get out there. I know there's a few things going on in New London. And, you know, I think Waterford has their parade, I believe, this coming Saturday. I do have to say, juggling that calendar, sometimes I feel like I'm going day to day, but I really just want to remind people, you know, have an open mind, meet with both candidates, really listen to what they have to say, look at, you know, what their personalities are and what defines them and, you know, what resonates with you with what they're saying and where you connect. And I think everybody needs to get out there and vote. It's your right that you were given, and you really, really need to get out there and vote.
Fantastic. That's critical. Listen, I want to thank you for carving out an hour to spend here on City Focus, and we'll
Thank
have you
you.
back. Folks, before we cut out for the night, I just want to have a last minute plug here for the Kiwanis Club of New London's annual golf tournament, which is September 20th at Shinnecossett in Groton. And we need everything. We need players and sponsors, volunteers, prizes, raffle prizes. And we put on a terrific tournament and raise a lot of dough, and it all goes back into the community. So please help out. You can contact me, Ted Nelson, John Russell, or any other member of the club. And with that, we're going to close for the night. So
Right.
again, thank you much. We'll say good night. See you
Thank
next
you.
week here on City Focus. My guest will be Tony D'Angelo. Good night.